etc. If you look at the cost on one side and you look at the benefit that has been accruing on the other side, some say too expensive, some say it's still not enough. We need to be a bit, or we need to do a bit more. Has it been worth it? Cost-benefit analysis. Has it been worth it, or do we need to invest a bit more into our parliamentary exercise?
Yes, I think we need to do a lot more.
A bit more?
A lot more.
Please speak up for us.
Yes. We've heard a lot about cost of democracy. I mean, democracy doesn't come cheap. People talk a lot about ex gratia awards and the rest of it, car loans and so on. I mean, comparing Ghana with other countries, even in Africa, you can see that our cost is lower. Now, we can be a bit more efficient. But let me say that between 1993 and now, 25 years, if you look at the stability we have enjoyed economically and socially and politically, the benefits far outweigh the costs, in my opinion. There is nothing we can compare the peace we have enjoyed with. If the peace we are enjoying comes with that cost that we have to spend on Parliament, on executives and judiciary, we should. But of course, we should be efficient. And once we utilize our resources well and we keep this peace going and we sustain this parliamentary democracy and we grow economically, you will see that the benefits will now trickle down to everybody and we will come to appreciate it.
Nene, do you share that view, or you're on the side of those who say it's too expensive already?
Well, we all accept that democracy is an expensive exercise and we cannot run away from it. Technically, every member of parliament is supposed to have two homes, one in his or her constituency and the other in the capital where the parliament house is. And that one you cannot compromise about that. You compromise, it means the person cannot go to the constituency to meet his people or be in parliament in order to do his work as a parliamentarian. Parliamentarians are supposed to be well-resourced so that they can move up and down, trek between their constituencies as well as the Parliament House. They need logistical arrangements, they need secretaries, they need offices and all these things. It does not come cheap. And even when we look, we examine the interpretation of the Supreme Court on what is the meaning of the president's inability to perform his functions as president. Our Supreme Court has said when the president is out of the country, the president is unable to perform his functions as president. And about some few weeks ago, we had this challenge where the vice president, out of the blue, was indisposed, and the president was out of the country. So the Speaker of Parliament had to be sworn in as president. Parliament was, sorry, as president, acting president. Parliament
yes,
twice, but it would have been 3. I was told that the vice president was supposed to return on a Friday, but then he returned on a Thursday to enable the president to travel on a Friday to Senegal. If he had returned on Friday night, it would have been 3 within 1 week. Now let's examine the cost of one recall of Parliament with all the logistics, transportation, and all these things. One recall can build a hospital or a school.
I don't have the numbers on that, so I can't confirm.
275 members of Parliament, their transportation, logistics, and whatnot, times 275. So that is democracy. Schools under 3. Those communities without hospitals, that one recall could have built them.
So do I hear you say that efficiency is not just about cutting costs, but it's also about reorganizing perhaps some of the procedures and laws?
We have to examine whether, you see, the interpretation, or again, from where I come from as a member of the Ghana Bar Association, we say the Constitution is a living organism capable of growth. The Constitution is not static. And because it is not static, interpretation given to a provision of the Constitution today would not necessarily be that which will be given to that same provision tomorrow. So it's a living organism capable of growth, and things change because society is dynamic. The Constitution and its interpretation could also be dynamic, or is supposed also to be dynamic.
So if we are to go by the idea that maybe while being efficient, there are still gaps that we need to spend some more on, Prof, which sort of areas do you think we should invest a lot more in to boost the performance of our parliament?
Well, I agree with you and the rest of them that democracy is expensive, but it doesn't have to be needlessly expensive. So, one, I think we have too many members of parliament for the size of this country and the economy. I think 275 MPs is too many. Two, I think that the most important inputs that parliamentarians need to do effective work of representation, legislation, oversight is information. I think the capacity of Parliament to gather data, to analyze information. We just talked about budget oversight. We talked about the budget being a very technical document. I think if we could invest more resources, right, to help Parliament develop analytic capacity in budget analysis, like other parliaments have a budget office that does some of the number crunching for Parliament so that it feeds into the process of budget analysis and oversight. That would be good. And then I think that, there is I've had a lot of engagement with Parliament over the years. I still don't quite understand the logic of moving out of Accra a lot to have events, right? I think that is also a cost that we can cut down on. And so, yes, democracy is expensive, but I think that there are areas, if we have to think about how we reallocate the resources. The same amount of resources, but if we reallocate them differently, we could get maybe a more efficient parliament. But I would start with the number. 275 is just too many.
I hear you. I don't know if everybody here agrees with you, but we are almost at the end. We'll go for final wrap. There are obviously gaps that we can build upon so that perhaps when we're celebrating 30 years of uninterrupted parliamentary democracy, we can count some gains we've made between now and then. I want to quickly come round you, gentlemen, to tell me if you identify any specific gaps that you think we need to, very quickly deal with. If I look at the Constitution, there are many things that are imperatives on Parliament to do that remain undone. If you look in terms of operations beyond the ones that you've mentioned, maybe about two each in our last.
I'll mention two, but I don't think I'll mention what you have just mentioned. First, I support spirited arguments in Parliament. When I see the minority and majority arguing cases in a spirited manner, it gladdens my heart. It means our democracy is growing and maturing. But what I feel uncomfortable about is when I see an MP come out in public to say distasteful things about Right Honourable Speaker. I hate it because we all look up to Parliament and we expect that in the next 25 years and beyond, when they take their arguments from the chambers to the public, they must be very careful because we are all looking. And I think that is an important thing that I want to underscore. The next one has to do with all the things that come to Parliament for them to ratify. I will expect that parliamentarians will look for where the employment clauses are. My point is that the biggest challenge we have in this country is to create jobs for our young people. Therefore, I expect Parliament to ask questions. How is this document, these agreements, these contracts going to create jobs? How are these trade policies we want us to ratify? How are these investment policies we want us to ratify? How are these procurement policies we want us to ratify? Create jobs. And with this question, I think we can help the executives create more jobs. Thank you.
I will take it from the point of view of first education and education again. Especially the younger members of parliament need to be trained. They ought to be trained in proper parliamentary procedure and what is expected of them as parliament. It's as if some of them are so excited that they are in parliament, and at the slightest provocation, they want to rise to their feet and let their voices be heard in parliament, and creating unnecessary noise and confusion in parliament. So there's the need to educate members of parliament. We are not, as the majority leader said, we are not a country in which we have people who have spent 30 years and 40 years of their lives in parliament. It is as if there's competition now for people to push others out so that they will take, or it's a baton-changing system which we are running in our parliament, that after 2-3 years you must make way for others also within your constituency to take over. So we ought to look at that and interrogate that. 2, we ought to prioritize the laws that we want Parliament to pass. There is no justification why Article 22 provided as far back as 1993 that Parliament shall pass a law for the property rights of spouses. And 25 years down the line, this law has still not been passed. Is it that Parliament does not care, or the male members of Parliament are afraid to come out with this law, which the Constitution clearly says that property should be distributed 50-50? There is no justification. Other laws have been passed. So the question then is, why is it that this law is still not passed? Parliament must prioritize. So not only that law, the Interstate Succession Law and other laws also which are in the offing, the Right to Information Act, these laws are out there, and we want to see them passed by the end of the year. That would be my plea.
Nene, so what do you make of the defense by MPs that, again, you go back to the age-old interpretation that has been given? Many of these bills, or even amendments, so-called, must come from the executive. Take, for example, even some of the mundane ones that do not impose a charge on the purse, like what Supreme Court says should be done in the case of Article 1815, define properly what an international financial transaction means. But very often you find the argument that the executive must be the one to bring it. What would you say to a lot of MPs who are gathered here with our leadership as well when it comes to some of those?
But that is why we have the opposition. The Constitution says this thing should be passed. The executive is supposed to initiate and bring the law, and they are not. That is why we have the opposition, to make noise and to ensure that these things are brought in. So we have no defense. We have no justification.
I hear you. Prof.
So I think members of parliament, we all agree, are mostly generalists, right? They're not, they are supposed to be generalists because the matters that come before them just cover a whole range of matters. I think they could one of the things I think our parliament could do well, or better, is take advantage of the wealth of knowledge and expertise that actually lies outside parliament, in the professions, in civil society, in academia, and open its doors a lot more. Yes, we have some access. Civil society does have access. When bills come to parliament, we get called every now and then to make input at committee stage, but these are usually very ad hoc. They are very irregular. They come sometimes on short notice, doesn't give you ample time to develop a real position paper. But I think that the quality of Parliament's output could be significantly improved, substantially improved, if Parliament made better use of the resources that lie outside Parliament. Because, there's power and then there's knowledge. Sometimes they go together, sometimes they don't. So the real issue is how to get power and knowledge to work together for the public good. So that's one thing I would say Parliament must do a lot better. In terms of what to do to enable Parliament to be more effective, some of the constraints I have identified, I think the Majority Leader also mentioned one of the constraints, that as long as that constraint is constitutional, it's a hard constraint. Parliament cannot do much about it. If you must choose a majority of your ministers from within Parliament, among members of Parliament, and that changes the nature of the incentives that parliamentarians operate under, and that also changes the nature of the relationship between Parliament and the executive, turning Parliament into a junior partner rather than a co-equal, then we must probably do something about that constitutional provision. I would not, maybe just realistically, it may not be feasible to say, make sure no member of Parliament becomes a minister. But why a majority? Maybe we can put a constraint. Maybe not more than 1/3, maybe not more than 10 can come from Parliament if they have special expertise, so that they can join the executive. But we must find some solution to this problem, because it really does affect the nature of the incentives under which MPs operate in dealing with the executive.
We would see how His Excellency Dr. Abubakar Bukola Saraki factors your thoughts into his keynote address, which he will deliver shortly on the future of good governance in Africa. I know a lot of people are of the view that MPs, when they want to approve something, say, yeah. But I'm educated to know that it is here. So may I ask you all to give our panel a big here for their performance this afternoon? Here. Oh, some people are still saying yeah. Dr. Yao Ba from the Trades Union Congress, Nene Amegache, immediate past president of the Ghana Bar Association, Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh from the Coalition of Civil Societies in Ghana. I thank you very much for your time. Shall we resume our seats? Good job.
Thank you very much, panelists. Thank you very much. Honorable colleague, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have another here for our panelists, please?
Here.
I would like to invite the National Dance Ensemble to perform a cultural dance for us. A round of applause, please.